So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the best Saturday of your life because, well, every day is a new beginning. And that includes today, and that includes this Saturday. And today we begin this day with something special. You know what that is, right? It's the land acknowledgement. That's right, Canada's new official land acknowledgement. And it goes something like this. We'd like to gently acknowledge, grab your cup and ready, because we got to toast and sip to this. We'd like to gently acknowledge that we're standing on the traditional territory of, well, whoever was here and was savagely killing each other and genociding each other at the time. They aren't in charge anymore, so leave us alone. And maybe we're in charge until the Americans take over. Sip. And please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you, everybody who's been participating in the Discord and all the other stuff. And all your comments on Substack. I'm losing track, everybody, where everything is coming from. Mug is poised. I'm glad. Oh, hi, Heidi. Aloha and hola a ti. uh, yeah, DJ2R. That second sip was specifically for you, sir. So kindly, I really appreciate all of you. So there's a lot going on in the world. Not only the fact that I have slept very little most of this week, so if I seem a little bit off, just exhausted, I think for the past until last night, I got 2-3 hours of sleep for 3 nights in a row, and it's just it's killing me. But it is what it is. I think we're totally having this amazing period right now, aren't we? Can you feel it? Um, I don't know. And maybe that's why they're protesting in Canada. I don't know if you've seen, but once again, we have the Death to America people and the Death to the Use people. They are protesting in Canada or rioting in Canada again at the Quds Day thing. That's going to be relevant to what we're talking about a little bit later on. We know Blackface Trudeau was the most pathetic leader in Canadian history. Mark Carney is quickly saying, hold my beer. Let me see what I can do. But, given what's happening in Cuba right now, I was thinking, why don't we celebrate this period? And I think the best way that we can celebrate solidarity with the Cuban people is I think we can move from the blackface Trudeau regime, referring to him as what he is, blackface Trudeau. And maybe it's time to shift over to Castro's kid. What do you think about that? Does that have it's a nice ring to it? Castro's kid. Blackface Trudeau, Castro's kid. Maybe something to that effect. Just a thought. I think it's relevant. I was asked about platforms and where I'm going to be on streaming, ongoing, and posting things and whatever. I think I've mentioned I would like to focus on Substack and the locals and possibly Discord as we're trying to sort out that server. But basically, right now, wherever you are, I'm trying to make it wherever you're most comfortable and have as little friction as possible. That's why right now, I even the Twitch account is streaming as well as I think YouTube, and I don't think Facebook anymore. But anyways, the focus, I think, over time is going to be Substack and locals, but we'll see what happens. I don't even know. I mean, I set it up for X. I don't know if it's streaming because X tends to be a little bit unreliable with streaming for some reason. So we'll be continued doing it here. So in review, the U.S., we talked last time about the U.S. has sent its third aircraft carrier to the region. And apparently this was thought to be a triangulate strategy against the Iranian regime. We'll talk more on that in a bit, but that was the initial reason, as they had been jockeying carriers. And I saw a very interesting video. I'll see if I can find the link for you from some people in the U.S. military that talked about the triangulation strategy of going after the regime. Seems to have worked. I think we can say it's working pretty good, despite all the radical lefties trying to lose their mind and trying to, I guess, brainwash people on the right to turn them into, I don't know, wannabe Rachel Maddows or something like that. Just really weird what's going on right now, but I think we'll touch on that in a little bit. And we talked a lot about the Jewish space lasers from Israel. That seems to be that might be incorporated or some variant of that in the F-47 fighter that's coming out, which is cool. As we do more research about it, we find out more. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah, the F-47 Jewish space lasers. That's what we're hoping for. And that what I'm referencing is we know that. That laser defense system that has been deployed in Israel, any technology that Israel gets automatically goes to the United States. And often they buy U.S. new technology to test it in the battlefield because they're always being attacked by radical Islam. That's just kind of the way it is. Lefties don't like it, and woke right lefties don't like it either. But there's a saying I love. The idea is that facts don't cease to exist just because they're ignored. So whatever. Dugin has become very popular all over the web, as we've been talking about. I wonder why. Maybe somebody had started implanting magnets in people's heads over the past 18 months. Maybe that's the reason. Could be, be something completely different. But you can see, I think Dugin is in panic mode, and he is tweeting and reposting on X. That seems to be his only outlet to the world at this point. But he's been doing this at such an accelerated rate. And I pose the question that is it possible that Dugin is going to be the next Prigozhin as he becomes increasingly embarrassing to the Putin regime? I don't know. What do I know, right? But I did pose the question, is it going to be poisoning? Is it going to be falling out of a balcony? Or, I don't know, an unfortunate aviation accident? But I'm willing to bet one of those three are in Dugin's future, especially as, the Trump administration after Cuba, I'm sure is going to try to focus a little bit more on Ukraine and Russia and trying to end that. And in terms of trying to normalize relationships, having this alt-right wannabe Nazi or whatever he is, stirring the pot against the Trump administration, I don't think that's an effective long-term play. What do I know? So on to some tech and some good stuff, and then we'll get to the what's been happening over the past few days since we've done this. By the way, just a little thing. I wanted to do a stream today and tomorrow, but as you can see, I'm not at home, and I am down south, and there's a number of events I'm participating in, and have been always, whenever I'm down here, I'm always asked to go to certain events. It turns out one of them is tomorrow exactly at this time, so I won't be able to do a stream tomorrow. However, I think after my presentation with some others on Monday, I may be able to slip in some additional streams during the week, and then we can get back onto a more regular schedule. So hopefully, I apologize, but hopefully this disruption is only for this weekend. I apologize. It's difficult doing double duty. It's even more difficult doing triple duty, right? Dropped in late. Good morning. Replay it 2 times to catch up. Well, thank you. Is it Brian Matheson? I'm not sure, but because everybody's got a short version of their name. But I appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you joining. I'm trying to see if I can see everybody's comments here, because the way the encoder works, I have, I don't know, so many different feeds, and they're supposed to bottle into one, but it doesn't seem to work with a couple of the platforms, including X. So I wonder if I can upload it and just put the mute on. Hold on, you might hear some background stuff for 1 second. Let me just go to, I'm trying to set it up if I can see your comments at all. I may not be able to, but I'm trying to, okay. All right, I think I have it sorted out that I can see your comments if you post them on X. It's actually working this time, which is very unusual. So, all right. In good news, let's start with tech. It's very interesting. This in the next day or a couple of days, Tim Cook is going to be. Let me send. Okay, there you go. I know. People are sending me DMs and private messages. I'm doing my best here in this duct tape and glue presentation. I want to do this so as I'm going to different places and when I'm in Ireland and I'm going to be traveling a bunch of places that I'll be able to continue to do these. But you can see my phone there. That's probably not good. Let's move here. All right. I'm trying to get this as good as possible. I know. All right. So Tim Cook is going to be leaving Apple. I think within days or weeks. Like it's very. It's going to be very soon. And I remember when, we all remember when those of us who are Apple fans, and if you're not an Apple iPhone fan, I'm assuming many of you have Apple computers, or you're aware of the importance of Apple. Regardless what platform you're using, everybody in the tech sector has been influenced by Apple and their changes since, essentially 2004. When the newest iMac came out and just kind of revolutionized all of computing, and then the iPhone in '07. So it's an extremely relevant company. I know people had been, selling off shares, worried about its future, all that sort of stuff, and they stumbled massively around AI. I'm not so sure that's going to affect them so much, especially now that they have Google Gemini. But anyways, Tim Cook is going to be leaving, and I didn't realize how effective Tim Cook was as a CEO. He's really good. He's really, really good. So, I ran through kind of a list of his achievements, of which there are many, but here's just a few of the highlights. So, Tim Cook oversaw Apple's growth from $350 billion in market capitalization to finally $1 trillion, $2 trillion, and $3 trillion milestones. Uh, that's quite that's quite impressive. He significantly increased Apple's revenue and profits. He roughly doubled them in many periods, reaching hundreds of billions of dollars annually. He expanded and scales Apple's service businesses dramatically. Apple Music and iCloud. Like he had a lot of infrastructure to build upon, but we know Steve Jobs was very much a minimalist and he kept their product line very minimal. And Tim Cook took the opposite approach. There wasn't one iPhone, there was multiple, and they did that for many of their products. I think that's what allowed it to expand exponentially. And he turned all of these service businesses into major revenue streams for Apple. And he launched and grew successful new product categories, including the Apple Watch, the AirPods, and Apple Silicon transition. Those of us who are computer nerds and like Apple hardware as I do, that's what I'm using right now. It was massive. It was a significant shift to their own chips, which many of us were worried it was going to be like PowerPC, which was prior to the Intel machines. But things seems to have worked out marvelously because they have a whole ecosystem and infrastructure. And he successfully navigated the post Steve Jobs era, and everybody's worried about that. Everybody thought Apple would die with Steve Jobs, and they clearly have been struggling with ideas in certain areas, but a $3 trillion valuation, and they have a new CEO coming in. And I don't know this. If you know the Apple team, John Ternus is rumored to be the replacement for Steve Jobs, and he's younger, much younger guy, and I think he's from the engineering side, but he also understands the marketing presentation stuff. He's done a lot of the recent presentations at their keynotes, their online keynote presentations of new products. But he was largely responsible or a big part of the team of the transition to Apple Silicon. And most importantly, if you have an Apple computer and you were frustrated that Apple would basically slim down their lines to only one USB-C port, and you were demanding ports come back to Apple laptops like a normal laptop would be, well, you have John Ternus to thank for that. He's the reason you once again have ports in your Macs. So he's not afraid of admitting, okay, maybe this was the wrong direction. Maybe we should do something else. So, John Ternus, I think him taking over the helm of Apple, despite the fact that so much of the people who are within the infrastructure have gone or are retiring. I think there's just going to be a new wave of young creativity. And much like, Tim Cook, everybody criticized him for being woke. And he certainly was woke-ish in some ways. There's no question. But I think he was not nearly as woke as some people thought he was. I think he's more representative of older demographic within the gay community. Many of the people I know within that community who, lived through the 60s and 70s, which is a very different world. So I don't think he was quite as woke as people think, which is why he was able to work with the Trump administration and, did a little bit of the push and pull because he knew he had a certain client base. And some of the radical leftists in his client base, attacked Apple. But that's always the case. Maniacs are always going to attack no matter what. But, I think he certainly appeased the wokies to a point to pacify them. But I think largely he was, like Trump, a pragmatist. And that pragmatism led to the success of success of Apple, and the diversification of their manufacturing as they expanded manufacturing around the world, and they brought manufacturing back to the United States in the case of, I think it's the Mac Pros. So, yeah, Tim Cook out, and John Ternus, we think, is going to be in. So good luck to Apple, and hopefully that will lead to change for the better. All right, today in comic relief. Uh, Today's comic relief, we have a guy named Tucker Carlson. so crazy. So the latest from Dugin Jr. is he said in some meltdown he had yesterday, this is his quote, "I didn't realize it was going to be a joint operation with a country that believes in Amalek," whatever that is. "Whoever made that decision should be jailed." Well, I think the people who made that decision were Trump, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth. So is Dugin Jr. now calling for the arrest of Trump, Marco Rubio, and Pete Hegseth? He wants them to be jailed? Is that what it is? For taking out the mullah regime? What is going on? What's wrong with that kid? It's almost like he's been brainwashed, which we've discussed here quite a bit. Anyways, so in the good news around the world, and boy, today do we have a lot of good news to celebrate around the idea of freedom. So celebrations seem to have begun on the streets of Cuba, and this is a post from Guajiro Digital, and Guajiro Digital says, "What excitement!" And there's a video he posted online of them, setting ablaze the communist stuff, the murals and all the, not all, but many of the symbols of the Castro, Trudeau Sr., Blackface Trudeau Sr. Propaganda in the city. And he says, "Engrave this video in your memory. It will become part of the history of Cuba's freedom." People are celebrating the streets with pots and pans because, well, that's all they have, right? And you can see they're setting fire to all this stuff, and they're having a little bit of a party, and they see freedom finally on the horizon, right? And what's interesting is what led to this, the Cuban government, and maybe this is why it's going to be peaceful, because you're not going to see the sort of violence in Iran where the IRGC, they're just never going to die. They're never going to stop until they're all killed. They just need to be liquidated into paste. That's the only thing that's going to end every one of them. So they just need to be assassinated. But, they're coming to Canada, right? They're getting visas now. You saw yesterday there was a video of one of the Iranian mullahs somehow got a visa to Canada and now is getting off a plane in Toronto Pearson. So Canada is going to become the new Cuba. It's what it looks like, with a little bit of radical Islam flair to it, right? And that would be more Venezuela. That's probably in the future of Canada. So, anyways, the Cuban government publicly made a statement and saying that what's the guy's name who's running it? Diaz-Canel. He made a public statement that they are now negotiating with the United States. Wow. You can imagine if you were alive during the Cuban Missile Crisis and throughout the Cold War to hear that. That is truly significant. And I'm thinking this way at this point, if they're making these statements online, is there any way Cuba doesn't become Puerto Rico 2.0 at this point? Like, is there any way? It's amazing. And did you notice the technique? We've seen this over and over again, that Trump wills things into existence. He takes things that are completely really absurd ideas to most people, and he normalizes it through repetition. And it becomes regular conversation. This is something that it's kind of an entrepreneurial framing. This is why sometimes, many of us have said you need more people with practical business experience in the world to be involved in steering a country's politics. Yeah, I love how the shirt looks like AF on the main feed. It looks like AF, not on Substack. But anyways, so he'll will these things into existence and using this entrepreneurial sales technique, and all of a sudden it becomes regular conversation. It becomes accepted, right? Like we're talking right now that Cuba may potentially become Puerto Rico 2.0. I personally don't understand how that doesn't happen at this point. And this is part of the reason throughout my life, and I think lots of entrepreneurs have been through this themselves. When you suggest new ideas to people, you got to be careful how you do it, because most people, they react a certain way when you give them a new idea that's not within their framing of the world. They just respond with, "Oh, that'll never happen." It's the most common dismissive term that you hear from people who lack vision. "Oh, that'll never happen." And that is, for me, an indicator you're dealing with an NPC, right? There's somebody who has many, many assigned opinions to them and can't see broader vision, which is fine. I mean, there's lots of people, we have certain people are different cogs in the system. Certain people are just the people who stamp the papers. And other people are the ones who actually do the critical thinking and think creatively about solutions to ideas. And those tend to be people who are more entrepreneurial in how they view the world, right? But this, I think, is the best, is the best, but this is a good indicator when you go throughout the world to try to figure out if you're dealing with an NPC. Try to pose a new idea. And if they respond, they respond automatically with this programmed response. "Oh, that will never happen." You're dealing with an NPC. And it would require a lot of reframing for them to accept new ideas. And for those sorts of people, social proof it carries a lot of weight. It carries a lot of weight with those people, because a lot of people are just fueled by social proof. That's just how people are, right? But anyways, those are the same people who also said something else. The people who would say, "Oh, that will never happen," they also said, yeah, Trump will never be president. I think is one of the common things that they said. Yeah, and then they're not the greatest predictors for things, and that's great. I mean, listen, we all have people like that in our families, and our friends and our networks and whatever. Doesn't mean they're bad people. They just lack vision, and they're not the ones who kind of steer the world, which is great, because we can't have everybody steering the world, because then we would have total chaos, right? But in terms of Trump, in terms of being somebody who's innovative, let's remember this is the same guy who used the mugshot, the mugshot, for his political endorsements as he sent them out into the primaries, and then he swept. All 32 endorsees were elected with his mugshot. Just a certain way human beings are programmed, just a certain way we operate. And if you understand that, then the world becomes a whole lot more predictable, and it also becomes a whole lot less frustrating when you understand this is how people operate. And then you don't need to You really don't need to you can avoid a lot of conflict that way in terms of communicating with people when you understand how they've constructed their framing of the world, right? I've been going to check it, but waiting to get the. Oh, you're talking about Discord. They're talking about Discord in the chat. Yeah, but a few of you are slowly joining the Discord. Please reach out to Jess, and she'll help any of you guys get in. Good morning, Maureen. It's good to see you. I hope you can join as well. We're trying to make the Discord a place that you can all package, I don't know, memes, information, trade stuff. I'm going to build out some sort of forum structure for each episode of this, but this week's a little bit chaotic, but this is kind of an ongoing thing. So between Discord and Substack, those two and locals, I think that's going to be the lion's share. And I think I'm going to be doing some whiteboard videos once I get a little bit settled on a number of things. So, all right, Iran. So Iran, or Greater Persia, should we call it? So Iran has appointed its next dead Ayatollah. No joke. They appointed a dead Ayatollah. Good luck to you, boys. First, from the Zionist entity. Good luck to you, Iran. You suckers. So it was funny. First, it was said that the new Ayatollah, who was Khomeini, I don't care, his son, after he was liquidated, that the new Ayatollah, his son, was appointed, but he had a severed leg and was in a coma. Well, first they said he was impotent. That was the first round of stuff. Well, I guess if they severed his leg, they might have severed something else. So the one-legged eunuch that was appointed the new Ayatollah, apparently he was one-legged and a eunuch because of one of the bombings or something in Iran. But who knows what's true, right? Like, we don't really know either way. But it is funny to know that a one-legged eunuch was the next supreme leader. Yeah, he ain't so supreme, is he? But did you see they had this ceremony where they, I don't know, appointed him, or, Allahu Akbar, our new Ayatollah, who really cares? But did you notice? You must have seen this going around because there's so many memes about it. It's hysterical. I'm sorry, I'm crying. It's so funny. They're so pathetic. They had a cardboard cutout of like a human cartoon form. Like, imagine you had I don't know, the character from South Park, but just stretched it out, but it was on cardboard, and then a cardboard cutout of the picture of his face at the top. That's how they were, I don't know, Allah Akbaring the new Ayatollah and appointing him leader. I mean, that part, you see the videos, right? Listen, I've been to a lot of political ceremonies, even, within a political party in the West. They have their events where people get, elected to different positions and all that sort of stuff. So I've seen some of the stuff on the inside. Plus, we've all seen geopolitically how ceremonies are. Many of you go to places of worship, places of faith. There's a certain professionalism to when you're, I don't know, appointing your ultimate supreme leader of your movement, like the top guy, the top G, right? You don't put a cardboard cutout and a printing of his face onto a cardboard cutout. Like, was that a laser printer? Was it inkjet printer? That's what I want to know. So you're telling me that they put his head on this cardboard face, a cardboard cutout, his face, they attached it to it, and they still have infrastructure? Really? Really? They still have political infrastructure? Really? They put a cardboard cutout of the guy, right? If this were done before, like if somebody had done this while any Ayatollah or leadership was alive, I'm assuming the people who would do that would have been executed and hung from a crane for a great insult to the supreme leader. So how does the great insult to the supreme leader become the actual ceremony? of the supreme leader. I don't know, one-legged eunuch. Maybe that's the only way. But it's funny. It's just I think that shows that there's really nothing left. That the only thing left maybe are the water boys and the janitors from the IRGC, and they don't know what to do. Right? They have no idea. So they're just okay. Fire rockets, do this. What I'm trying to mimic what the IRGC leadership did. I think it's fair to say that there's probably nothing left but water boys and janitors. I think that's all that's left. And yesterday, the Trump administration announced that they destroyed all military assets on what's called Karg Island or Harg Island. I don't speak Farsi, so I don't know how they pronounce things there, and don't really care. But it's an island in the Strait of Hormuz that had it was basically a military defense island. Like it was just loaded up to the hill with defense and rockets and all that sort of stuff. And I guess ships. No, well, no, there's no more ships left, but something was there where they used to target the Strait of Hormuz, which had a dramatic effect on international shipping, right? Insurance for large cargo carriers and the diplomacy required because they had such a stranglehold on that. It's that little area of the Strait of Hormuz where there's a tip coming out of I guess it's the Arabian Peninsula, right? So I think we know why the Americans sent their third aircraft carrier to the region, because apparently that island just been completely wiped out. Just completely. That's it. Nothing left there. I mean, I guess you can go camping right now on, the burning embers of whatever bases were there and whatever military infrastructure was there. But apparently it's all gone. Everything's gone. So now the Strait of Hormuz is going to be a little bit more open and free. So is that why they sent the third aircraft carrier? Usually I think in government and military, there's never one reason. There's always a multitude of reasons, a multitude of benefits that's how you do your cost benefit analysis. And I think that was one of the many benefits. And I think there's another lesson from this, that given that they basically were acting like pirates in the region, the IRGC, inflation is not exclusively due to monetary debasement. That is a big part of it. But there are other causes, many other causes. And the Iranian regime threatening cargo ships from around the world and likely extorting them is probably one of the other reasons. So we're going to go to another victory in a second. Now I'm just looking at your comments right now. And good morning, everybody. Hey, Risa. Would love to know and introduce the eyes of an NPC. Well, yeah, we can talk about NPCs a little bit more. We will. They're kind of easy to spot. And you can tell people because there's another form of NPC. It's the NPC that ascribes to every conspiracy theory. Just because there are conspiracy theories that seem like they could be plausible, doesn't mean they're real. Some of them are. Not everyone is. And then there's the other NPC that dismisses everything as a conspiracy theory because it requires cognitive abilities to be able to discern what is likely and probable and possible. And sometimes there are things that are just unknowable. You don't know either way if it's a conspiracy theory versus sometimes, they'll dismiss everything as a conspiracy theory when it's just, effective geopolitical strategy. And for example, political entryism by Muslim Brotherhood and other extremist networks operating in, I think, every country in the West. The people who dismiss that, often in the conservative side, but also on the liberal side, those are also NPCs, right? It's just, we'll get more into that. But So, next on the list of victories for, freedom and the Trump administration and Hegseth and Marco Rubio on that team, which are just amazing. Maduro, the bus driver, is in jail, as we know. And yes, that's what he was prior to getting into politics. He was a very angry socialist bus driver. He apparently is not doing very well. He's not handling jail very well. Imagine you're a bus driver, and then you get the reins of a country, and you're living in palaces, and you're thinking, "All right, I'm done." And then, it's now back into the little cell, which I think is 2 meters by 3 meters. That is his life right now. And there's a post online. According to this post, I can't remember the source. I'm sorry. I was looking for a lot of stuff on the plane and doing a couple things at the time, so I couldn't. I tried to copy down the source, but I didn't get it. So I apologize to whoever put this out there, but this is this is interesting. The post says that, quote, the renowned attorney and friend of Donald Trump, Peter Tickton, gave an interview on InfoWars. I don't know why you go there, but on InfoWars, and shocked everyone with his statement about Nicolas Maduro. At least, he says, at least I have no doubts Maduro is going to sing like a canary. And I wouldn't be surprised at all, knowing, there's certain behavioral traits that are different in the Western world versus, let's say, the Anglo-Western world versus the Latin America. And, garbage like Maduro, like low-level trash, not because he was a bus driver, because he's a communist. Low-level trash like that, they do act tough, but boy, they do cower like little babies very quickly as soon as there's significant pressure put on them. So I don't know. I asked, addressing that, and I think this is interesting. An interesting question to consider. What happens if there's significant pressure put on him, which there is right now, and he decides he's going to sing like a canary, and we find out about Venezuela's involvement in the 2020 US election? What then? What happens? Doesn't that undo a lot of things? Doesn't that undo a lot of the lawfare and the prosecution? Like, wasn't Sidney Powell lawfared for this significantly? Forget Fox News and all that. I'm just talking about the individuals, because Fox News, clearly there was something shady going on. They settled a claim that they shouldn't have settled. And by the way, that company, that I won't mention their name, although it's now owned by a conservative, by the way, but in its previous ownership, that company was down the street from my old business. It's so funny. And yeah, it's just pretty, and everybody in conservative politics knew that company and the previous people behind it, because they used those machines for their nominations in the Conservative Party for exactly the same reason. That's how we knew something dodgy was going on. So I don't know. But it's something to consider. What happens? Will people in the U.S. government, the previous administration that were involved, if we find out that this was happening, I'm not saying it has happened, right? We're just kind of speculating. If doing this thought experiment, I'm not saying this is what factually happened, but if this happens and we find out everything is confirmed, then are people going to get prosecuted? That's because it's pretty serious, right? So I don't know. Risa says, did you think about the terrorist attack in Michigan had anything to do with Doug Ford's canceling Al-Quds Day at the very last minute? No, I don't think so. I think it was going to be done anyways. Look, Canada has apparently 100,000 Hezbollah fighters in the country. Dearborn, Michigan is basically a caliphate at this point. I think it's important for countries like Canada and the US to now consider forced denaturalization or mass denaturalization of people who got naturalized as American or Canadian citizens who are enemy combatants and under spurious circumstances, right? They are tossed to global jihad infrastructure, their NGOs and all that sort of stuff. They just have to have their citizenship stripped and be deported, because they didn't come to the US and Canada like many people from Latin America or parts around the world or the Philippines, or just to contribute and have a better life. They exploited the system. So I think there's a long list of people, and many of us who've been involved in politics in Canada We know who these people are. There's a group of about 300 of them. They keep setting up different boards. They're tied to a bunch of mosques. It's the same people over and over again. They've been operating in Canada for like 20, 25 years. And we just need mass deportations. Their name got to be a list, and these specific people, all of them have their citizenship stripped. They need to be deported and prevented from ever coming back to the country. And yeah, probably their families too, because remember, Muslim Brotherhood infrastructure, they operate like the mafia. It's all their families. That's why they always have their families on the same boards of the NGO infrastructure, law firm, whatever they do. So yeah, mass denaturalization is a conversation we have to have, and something that has to be said unapologetically in the future, because you have alien values and you do not belong in the West. Sorry. Sorry, if you're not part of the enlightened West, you don't you don't belong here, and that's basically it. Jess says, and we have no military. The military we do have got feasible frostbite last week. We lost body parts. Being facetious, but I love you. And Maureen says, "Oh yeah, I forgot. I can click on this." Maureen says, "Yes." Oh, well, thank you, Maureen. Maureen. Okay. Anyways, so something we're going to talk more about I don't want to talk so much about the attacks on the synagogues. I think there was 4 yesterday, or over the past couple of days. There was the one in West Bloomfield, which was a Reformed synagogue. For people who are Jewish, aren't Jewish. They don't understand. There's no like homogenous, the Jews. There's Reformed Jews, there's Orthodox Jews, there's Hasidic Jews, and then you can divide them up into, Ashkenazi and Sephardic and Mizrahi. Like, it's not one unit. That's the communist view of the world. Like, if you say there's the Jews or the Christians, you think like a communist. That's collectivism. That's the opposite of Western Enlightenment. So anyways, we'll talk more about that as things develop for sure. I don't want to jump the gun. And I think it's important to let investigations go on, and then we can kind of thread the needle and put things together. What I want to talk about in this celebration of Cuba potentially becoming the next Puerto Rico and joining the United States is why we have so many wealthy people who push socialism. And in Canada, that's a particular problem. That's why we have so much chaos in Canada. And Canadians are always afraid of confrontation, so they'll never call it out. It used to be called champagne socialists, and they're largely hated by most Canadians a generation ago, maybe 2 generations ago. And now, for some reason, they've just expanded and have gotten so much political control in the country. And sometimes these are the wealthiest people in the country. And like, obviously not all wealthy people, but there's certain ones that have this mental poison, this brain rot in their system. It's the suspension of critical thinking is what leads to it. And I think we all see this trend around the Western world. What is driving it? And I think it might be related to something. And this is kind of Scott would talk about the hypnotist filter of how to view how people and tribes think and come to their conclusions and their worldview. I think it might be, firstly, the first thing is that's important to understand amongst the wealthier class, of which I've met many of them, grew up with many of them, not myself wealthy, but their people very much around me were the ones that become the champagne socialists. The first thing to remember is we get this distorted view that just because people have money that they're strong. That, in my case, what I've seen is the complete opposite. That they are not fueled, the wealthier class in the world, I mean, there's always exceptions, but just broadly, they're not fueled by wanting to control you and to control things because, well, if there's control, then there's responsibility. And you see those politicians all the time, right? Oh, the politicians want to control you. No, the politicians are more cowardly than you can ever be. That's why they won't address the Islamist problem, because they're cowards. They're not strong people. They're very weak. This is why Trump and Hegseth and Rubio are such a contrast to what we've seen for many years. So they're not fueled by control. They're fueled by fear. And you'd be surprised how fearful some of the wealthiest people are in the world, that it's all going to collapse, that they're going to be targeted, that society is going to collapse, and all that sort of stuff. But, there was this trend that was very popular in the 1970s. You've heard this before, Malthusianism, the idea that there's too many people in the world, that we need to reduce the number of people on the planet or it will destroy the planet, right? And I think that might have some roots in it. I think that might be part of the core problem that fuels their ludicrous philosophy, right? So I remember reading something quite a while back. I don't remember what it was, but that if you do an analysis of Russia's trajectory, where it is today, and what Russia could have been if they had not adopted communism and collectivism and all this crap that Dugin is trying to infect the Western world with, that Russia's population today would be something like 500 or 600 million people, and their economy could be maybe not exactly the United States, but very close to it. They would be a significant world power, not the collapsing S-hole that it is, right? And, you see this over and over again, that in, many of these countries that adopted socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it, that their populations had the trajectory of population growth is significantly lower than the trajectory of population growth in a Western open free market society. I don't like the word capitalism because that's actually a derogatory term from communists. The real definition is a free market, right? And what we're supposed to be without the corruption. We have corruption everywhere. We get that. But had they had a free market approach, that these countries would have had significantly more population. And is that the reason some of these very wealthy maniacs keep wanting to adopt socialist tendencies? And it's never one thing, of course. I'm not saying only that reason, the fact that it's easier to maybe predict markets or manipulate markets, like just many different reasons. But it's one of them, the fact that they bought into this Malthusianism nonsense, and that they see that as a solution to what they bought in, this false narrative that the planet is overpopulated and can't sustain so many people. Is that one of the many reasons of this multivaried set of reasons they've decided to do this? Because don't take it lightly. This whole Malthusianism thing amongst intellectuals and academics was very much in vogue, apparently, in the 1970s. It took almost a religious-like status. Like, it was really, really influential. So could this be the problem in the West, that these ideologues, the segment of the ultra wealthy, are tripling down on socialism because they know socialism's not great, but they think it's the only thing to prevent excessive population growth because they bought into this Malthusianism nonsense? Is that why? I don't know, maybe. It could fit. I remember YouTuber John Green, if you know who John Green and Hank Green are. Definitely not on the conservative. I think Hank's lost his mind, to be honest. But I remember watching something from John many years ago, many years ago, when they were much younger, and he was citing some paper on population growth, and I don't think they were actually, despite their political leanings, I don't think they buy into Malthusianism, at least from what I remember back then. And this paper was trying to explain why the planet can actually sustain way more people than are on it right now. And this particular paper suggested that if you took all the people in the world, which at that time, a decade ago, what was it? 7.5 billion people, something like that. If you took all the people in the world and you put them side by side, standing side by side, how many people do you think there would be in the world? What do you think, Maureen, Risa? What do you think? How many people would fit in? Like, what was the geographical area if we took everybody and stood us side by side? how large of a geographical mass would 7.5 billion people take up? Is it the size of Africa? Is it the size of Russia? Is it the size of China or Canada, the US? How big of a landmass, if all of us were standing shoulder to shoulder, how much landmass would we take? Well, it turns out it would take only the greater area of Los Angeles. Think about that. That's right. You take every person around the world, China's billion, India's 1.5 billion, whatever it is, South America's 500 million, all of Europe, all of Africa, and you put us all standing side by side, we could only fill the greater Los Angeles area. This is why when I drive across the United States, as I'm sure many of you have, you hear that you see that the United States is so sparsely dense. I was explaining this to somebody overseas this week who's never been to the United States. You get the idea from media that you look at the United States and you think everything is New York and Los Angeles. We're not even close. Like, there are places in the US that there's nothing but trees, and Canada is so much less dense than the United States. We have 1/10 the population, right? So much of the world is not used. And obviously, human beings require farmland and we require food, and we get that. But even with that, I don't know, it would be interesting to see what percentage of the Earth's landmass is attributed to urbanization and farming. I don't know. What's it going to be? 10%? 8%? Like, it can't be much more than that. We have a big planet. A really big planet. You drive long distance, you start to see that, right? If you fly around the world a lot, I think the problem is so many people have never traveled. Like, it's amazing. I met a lot of people recently in the States, never been out of their state, never been out of their state. And you see this online with some of the experts who are commenting on geopolitics, who don't have a passport and have never been out of their country. I'm sorry, until you've experienced the world, we might want to dial back our expertise. Yeah, we can have opinions, but laundering those opinions as facts, I think that's where the problem comes from. People gravitate to places that have resources. We have lots of resources in Canada. Yes, well, but Maureen, they're not gravitating to Canada. They all want to go to the United States, right? Canada's only got 40 million people. But also Canada's turning into Hugo Chavez, Venezuela. I saw something recently, Maureen, you'll like this. And I told this to somebody yesterday who is Latino here in Florida. I said, Canada right now is exactly 11 years into Hugo Chavez's political strategy and all his policies. Canada's 11 years into the Hugo Chavez strategy. That's how serious it's becoming in Canada. Think about that. We are 11 years into exactly the same policies as Venezuela. So much so, because people who are aware of this fact, they understand that the Iranians came into Venezuela and helped turn Venezuela into an S-hole. Well, who just landed at the airport yesterday in Toronto? The mullahs from the IRGC just came into Canada. Those people should be hung upside down and beaten. And let the Iranians do it, right? Let it the free Iranians in Canada give them their beating. And oh yes, I'm condoning the V word for them. Yes, they need to be beaten harshly. Sorry, I know it's not politically correct, but I don't do that nonsense. So the point is, I wonder if this Malthusianism brain cancer is what led to so many people in the champagne socialist class. Is that why they're holding on to this nonsense? Because they actually believe there's too many people in the world, and though they themselves may not endorse socialism, they think it's the necessary evil. You often hear from them. It's a necessary evil to keep our population under control. I'm willing to bet the number of people who believe that amongst the ultra wealthy is definitely more than zero. Definitely. Anyways. All right. So little positivity. Got to shut things down because I got to get going. Um, for a positive framing of the world, you know what it is today? You know what it's today? Because we got Cuba, Iran, Venezuela, and what's next? I don't know. I think I have a clue, but we'll talk about that next time. Freedom. Freedom is spreading around the world, definitely around the whole Western hemisphere. The world has never been so amazing technologically, and it's never been so free. Got to take a moment and enjoy that. So as you start to see these videos emerging out of Cuba of people celebrating on the street and enjoying themselves and getting the taste of freedom, step back and just watch them and just support it, but I don't know. I think it's important to sit back and enjoy it and, participate. It makes us appreciate the freedoms that we have. At least it does for me. And if we recognize and appreciate the freedoms that we have, even though we know there are people who are trying to ruin it and chip it away, we'll deal with them. But right now, enjoy the fact that the winds of change are in the directions of greater freedom for people around the world. I, for one, can't wait to see Cuba. I've never been because I wouldn't support the communist regime. But I definitely would support and visit Cuba as they gained freedoms and started to transition. And I think we all should, and we all could help in that initiative if we went to see it, right? All right. So, Risa says, I've heard a figure that is that we should all have about 50 acres each for each Canadian in Canada. That's how much landmass there is. Yeah, maybe. Does everybody need 50 acres? I don't care. You want to buy 50 acres or 1,000 acres? Good for you. But I don't know. I think there's Heidi says each human needs much more space and resources than a standing room. I get that. I understand that. But if I'm not, that's not the exercise. The thought exercise is just to show physically how many people there are in the world, and it's very small. And also remember, there's a behavioral tendencies. So I was shocked when I was in Latin America the first time, and there's a very big difference between Mexico and Colombia, for example. But there are different. We live in very different worlds. Whereas when you're in the Western world, when you're in Canada, the U.S., they like to say everything's big in Texas. Well, everything's big in the United States. That's not the case when you go to Japan, a small island. There are people. I was talking to somebody this week who think about this from an American frame. This particular person hates big houses, wants small, cozy places to live. I think that's probably common amongst Japan, that people are so used to having a smaller footprint. They just feel more comfortable. There's something, I was talking to some people from England one time, some supporters and friends of mine, and I asked them about this phenomenon of agoraphobia. I think it's called agoraphobic. And the idea of agoraphobia is you go to a place like America and you get anxiety because things are so big, because there's so much space, and it's like the opposite of claustrophobia. And they just get very uncomfortable. And this particular one person who was telling me is like, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't wait to go back to England where everything was small. Just a different perspective, right? So anyway, I got to run. I love you all. We'll talk more about this in the future. Thank you, everybody, Maureen and Heidi and Risa and everybody watching now and in the future. Let me just see on the other thing. I want to thank all of you for joining. I don't think I'm going to be doing a stream tomorrow. If I can squeeze in a stream before I go to the event tomorrow morning, I will. But I like that. Chris Christopherson, for those who don't know, is a brilliant country musician. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Anyways, I gotta run. I'm gonna try to do a stream tomorrow. If I can't, I will try to make it up during the week, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or something like that, and then through the weekend. But you're all amazing. I appreciate all your support, and thank you for that comment, Dale and Jess and everybody else. I will be on the Discord. You can message me there, and I'll try to put some more effort towards it or time towards it, Jess, over the next few days. As I think you've seen, I've been more active in it, and that will continue as I figure out this Substack, locals, Discord strategy and put it all together. And thank you, everybody. I love you all. I got to run because I think I got a busy couple of days. It's crazy what's going on now. All right. I love you all. And I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.